Welcome back to the big show. Josh McCown here. John Edwin, the illustrious one.
Man, we have had such a really amazing 2024, and we want to bring our listeners the top 5. We did over 60 episodes that we dropped in 2024, and we're going to bring you guys the top 5 episodes from 2024 to ring in your new year, and then we'll be giving you new content. But let's roll with these, baby.
If you're hearing this, it's the year 2025. We cannot wait to celebrate an entire great year with you. But wait until you hear these shows. Blast from the past, the best of the best from 2024. Old Lang Syne. Cannot wait to see you guys.
Let's go.
Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
Here's the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital Hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the big show, Capital Hacking. John Edwin, thank you for doing this with us.
What a pleasure it was to have Greg Farricielli.
Yeah, Greg, great to have you on the big show.
Yes. You know, he brought up so many great points, and it's awesome to have such a great community in GoBundance, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah, that's right. You met him through GoBundance. We both did. But I love the breadth of experiences. You know, this is a gentleman who's heavy duty into real estate investing. He even knows about that specialty called wholesaling. We don't get into that much. He does do some land development and all kinds of great things. One of my favorite things he gets into is this idea of stacked investing. Wait until you hear what he means by stacked investing. It's kind of similar to what you and I talk about as one of the capital hacking strategies we teach. But he's also going to talk a little bit from my point of view. I asked a public service announcement question to find out that there's a little something going on in the world of real estate today called buyer's agent issues and who's paying who. I didn't know about that problem, so we touch on that a little bit. And John, I know you did even more when I had to go.
Yeah, and he brings up an interesting concept about how he teaches realtors not to look for one-offs. And I'm not going to give it away, but there's some really great information that he shares and teaches us on how agents can have way more listings than they think. Also, he really gets into some land development stuff when we get in the weeds of what that looks like and the difference between what a developer is, because a lot of people think a developer is someone who buys ground and goes what's called goes vertical with it. But we talk about the differences of a developer and a builder.
Yeah, definitely a point of distinction that everybody needs to hear if you're getting into real estate development. We appreciate you guys. You're going to love this episode.
Let's go.
I'm very excited about having Greg on the big show, John. Thanks for getting this put together.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greg, I'm super excited myself. So why don't we jump right in, give us a little bit of background and tell us what you're up to this point.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. My background, I've been in real estate maybe 8 years. In that time, I started as a real estate agent, selling single family homes. Went from there, got into wholesaling, went from there to go into land development. We have now a development company called Rhythm Development, where we take large parcels of land and we entitle them and we sell them to builders. That being said, I also have a capital company for some syndications. I personally own a bunch of multifamily. I started lending money this year with some notes for some people that I know for some projects they have. Also, I've started the Stacked University, which is an educational platform to help basically real estate agents and anybody that kind of wants to get into investing. And it kind of teaches them my approach on it, which is a little bit different than most.
Hold on, Greg. Can you just go back a step? Tell us, where's home for you? Do you have a family?
That's a great question. So I just got married a year ago. Home is recently in St. Petersburg, Florida. We've been here 2 years. Very she has 2 kids that are in their 20s. But I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, And that's where all of my business is mostly still to this day. Nashville, Clarksville, places like that, Kentucky. I just live in Florida because I love it and it's beautiful, and I work wherever I want. So I live where I want to live and invest where the numbers make sense.
That by the way, that expression, first time I ever heard it was Real Estate Guys Radio. Is that where you got that expression?
I heard it from someone on one. It was either that radio or on Bigger Pockets or somewhere.
Sure.
But I was like, and then with 2020 and COVID, my business shifted. This was a perfect opportunity to see how that would work.
So, John, I know you have a lot of questions. May I ask my burning question first, and then we'll jump into all kinds of.
Josh, hit it, brother.
So, Greg, we got to learn. Eventually, I'm sure John's going to ask you more about what's going on in Nashville, because that's a curious real estate market that everybody talks about. But I have to ask you, we're looking at a killer t-shirt you're wearing right now called Stacked Investing. And I think you own the hashtag for that. Stacked Investing. It begs the question, because I think it's a pretty cool word. What do you mean by stacked investing, and what are you doing with that?
That's a great question. Well, stacked investing to me is more or less, so I don't like to teach strategy. I'm not the guy who's going to say, hey, let's learn land development because I know land development. Let's learn syndications because I know syndications. For me, I like to work backwards. If you get good at marketing and you're getting certain leads, especially as a real estate agent, people look at their leads and they look at the listings first. Like, this is a listing lead, but I like to look at it. Well, what are the 10 things that could be? And maybe a listing is probably the last resort. So you get the marketing, you get the leads, and you go through a process to see what makes the most sense by checking all the boxes. A single family home, for instance, it could be a rental, a flip, it could be owner financed, it could be sub 2, it could be a listing. It could be any of those things instead of just looking at it one way. So that's why I consider myself the kind of the jack of all trades. I have experts in all the fields I'm in, but I have a little bit of multifamily, a little bit of land development, land banks, notes, a lot of different things that kind of just like build a foundation not only up, but it builds a foundation going down.
Tell me about so you have a university. Is this an online course we could buy?
So Stacked University right now has a few students that are a mix between one-on-one and group coaching. The group coaching is getting them through their infrastructure, getting their day set up to going through to figure out what their business plan is and their model, and then into the exit strategy. So I'm teaching them how to look at these leads and be able to show them that their leads are just more than just listings. What else do we have here?
I totally agree with you on that, by the way. And I think part of that's because you went into wholesaling. And when wholesalers look at leads, they tend to think, is this a cash buyer who might want to replicate cash buying on something I find for them? Or is this a cash buyer who might want to be a lender? So you always see the universe of opportunities around real estate. And stacked investing, I imagine you also get the benefit that we talk about it sometimes in capital hacking, where human talent and financial capital come together. But we also love the idea of finding two wins at the same time, right? Mm. So say you are listing this property for Billy Bob. You could also talk Billy Bob into holding back 30%. Then you could create a note for Billy Bob with this. So my point is that kind of the universe where you're trying to have two wins for every deal?
Well, it's more than two wins, but let's just talk about land development for a second, right? When I used to get land development, I would get the deals under contract as the land. And instead of just going to a builder and a buyer, say, here you go, I would require them to give me the listing agreements on the back end.
Right.
So one deal can turn into 20 or 30 listings. Not only that, but you have the wholesale fee. Then you have all the listing fees, and you have all those fees built in. Maybe you do both sides on some of those, especially on the buy. If it's off MLS, you maybe get the buyer's commission, then you get your wholesale fee. So, and it's all the same amount of work. And I think that finding like stacking investing is like stacking relationships, right? As an agent, I think people should go after the builders that are doing 30 and 40 a year, the flipper that's doing 10 a year, and really building those relationships and finding the people that have like multiple properties and, where they're years long, career long relationships instead of just trying to hunt the next deal.
I love what you said there, and because that's what we're all about is building relationships. So in the Stacked University, are you primarily like, who's the client? Is it primarily real estate agents or investors? Both? What does that look like?
primarily real estate agents because I have a real estate agent background and I can talk to them at their level.
Mm.
So that's really helpful. Now, that doesn't mean I can't bring an investor, doesn't mean I can't show, but like my main people are the real estate investors that want to trade their commission income into equity, basically. You know, I feel like that real estate agents are all fighting over the same 3% listing agents and buyer's rep agreements. That's all they know. They don't know the 100 other ways to do real estate. And that's what I'm trying to bring to the market, especially with the real estate agents are coming under attack right now with this whole buyer's agent commission and all the politics and stuff like that. I like to stay out of that.
Yeah, that's a really big topic right now. You're right.
Public service announcement for those listeners who don't know that. Why don't we divert a minute here, John, and have Greg teach us what is the political football you're talking about?
Well, I can't teach you because I know very little bit about it, but you could find it on the NAR website. My understanding is that it's an antitrust violation for the seller to pay for the buyer's commission. So now buyers, they have to actually hire agents, not only on paper, but pay their fee, okay, as representation. What that does is now that adds whatever your market percentage is, say that's 3% to a buyer. You just literally added 3% inflation to every person that needs representation to buy a house. Because now when they couldn't come out of pocket before with 1%, now they have to come up with 4% just to pay the realtor instead of it coming out of the shared, which it really is my understanding, commission from the agent. And there's a lot of people that debate me on that, but I think that the commission model has to fluctuate somewhere. It's been like this for a long time. When they created buyer's agent commission a few years back, it was because it was buyer beware. Well, now you're back to that, and you're almost forcing them to pay for the agent that could just get paid from the seller because they agreed to it to begin with. That's not every transaction, but it was an agreement.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but how I understand that is it's up to the seller or the seller's agent on what the buyer's agent commission is going to be, either 3%, 2%, 0%. Is that right?
No, it's 100% from the seller.
From the seller, yes. That's right.
The seller is the one that says, I will pay this and you will split it with this. And a lot of the problem is agents not really educating their clients on what's really going on. So people got mad about it. They felt taken advantage of. So they put a class action lawsuit together. Totally understand it. But whose fault is that? It's the real estate agents by not setting expectations with the clients.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. Go ahead, Josh.
That's my uneducated opinion.
So, Greg, thank you so much for this information. We're going fast, so I'm going to dissect a little bit of what we were talking about. You had mentioned that you were a real estate agent for 8 years, correct, before you started investing?
Well, I was actually a real estate agent for about 3 years before I started investing, but I've been a total of my real estate career so far on year 8.
Oh, that's great. You know, a lot of agents never become investors, so it's really nice to have this conversation. What was the first types of investments you got into?
Yeah, great question. A lot of the first ones that I got into were partnering with my clients. So my clients would use other people's money to buy the dirt and stuff like that. Well, I was selling 30, 40, 50, 80 houses for these guys. So I was having a lot of commissions come in. So I'm like, instead of using them, why don't I put my money in and put my commission in? So I would basically, if we found like a 2-build lot, it was 150 grand or whatever, I would just put up 150 grand and I would agree on either a partnership share or a yearly return on the money or whatever it was. So when it closed, I got my interest check, I got my principal back, and I got my commission on finding the deal, and then my commission on selling the 2 listings.
Wow. Yeah. So that's definitely killing 2 birds with 1 stone. That's smart. That is really smart. And then you transitioned into multifamily investing?
Yeah, so I actually transitioned there from just buying land where I have some partners, we buy some land and rezone it and then resell it. So there were a lot of small ones. So I started building like 1s and 2s. And then after I sold a couple of those, like the second year, I took all my money and I started buying multifamily in some areas out in Clarksville, Tennessee. Bought quite a few quads, sold a few, wholesaled a few, got a few single families, all within about probably like a good 2-year period straight of just doing that whole model of land developing and buying multifamily.
And you're in the Nashville area, your investments, correct?
So yeah, I have some in the Nashville area, the Clarksville, Tennessee, Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Chattanooga, Tennessee, a couple places in Florida, St. Petersburg.
Where's your favorite spot?
Right now, my favorite spot, depending on what it is. So in general, I like Nashville because I know Nashville very well. I have the relationships with the city and everybody that you need to have those relationships for years. And I understand that market really well. And I know the little nooks and crannies of it. That's for your commercial, your land, stuff like that. For rentals and single families, I like to be way in the outskirts of anywhere. I like Clarksville right now. It's a little bit overpriced. I was buying at 60 a door. Now they're like 150 a door.
Oh, wow.
So significant increase. And I still, so we like in Kentucky, we just bought a building. It was, let me see what doors it was. It was 48 doors, but we only paid 3.7 for the deal.
Wow.
So 3.7 divided by 48. Yeah, it brings you 77 a door. So those are what I like, the B to C class, a little bit of Section 8, in a workforce area close to a highway that has more than 20 doors in one location.
Let's look at that. Let's dive into that 48 unit in Kentucky. Can you give us some numbers, cap rates, what it took? Did you do value add?
Yeah, I don't have anything in front of me, but I'm going to give you what I know.
Yeah,
So
that's fine.
it was a distress sale. The seller was doing he bought this property and 2 other apartments on a 1031. It was listed on Marcus and Millichap, and my now partner, was just found it on the internet. So he got with the agent, and they sent us the numbers, and he was working the deal, trying to negotiate it for a couple months until I came in. So it was originally listed about $1 million more than we got it for. So it took all that time to get the price down. So once he kind of knew that we were getting to a better spot, he brought me into it, and my partnership is a little bit different. So he needed me because he needed someone with the balance sheet that the bank would accept and the cash reserves. So my part of the GP was just being available and ready to do that and sign on the debt. And then, of course, I help out throughout. So we negotiated that deal. We got a lot of repairs negotiated, and we landed up closing. We raised 1.5 for mostly renovations. We overbought for a roof, we planned on our renovations and just any upkeep. We changed the NOI a lot by taking a lot of expenses out of there. And we think that the biggest asset with this apartment building is the debt. It was Fannie Mae assumable loan at 3.9, and we still have 8 years to go.
Great. It's great. When you say you raised the 1.5 for the value add stuff, did you bring in partners? Did you syndicate it? How did that look?
So we did a 5.0. It was the one where I can't advertise. It has to be personal relationships. I forgot the tax code for that off the top of my head. So basically, I went to people I knew, and we did increments of between, I think, 20 and 100.
Oh, wow.
So some people put in well over 200 or 300, and some people just put in like 20 or 50. Mostly, it was all people that we knew in our network. A couple guys from GoBundance, some of our investors that invest in other deals for us, people that we knew with money laying around. Smart. It was a very small raise, and we got it done pretty quickly.
Yeah, that brings me to a quote that Josh and I use frequently. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Yeah, and that's why I love this model, because I'm also able to invest as the GP, and then I get our asset management fee, or my portion of that. But then I also put my own cash in as the limited partner on the deal, because I don't like to raise money unless I'm putting my own money in the deal, at least for these smaller deals when I have to sign my debt on the personal. And it's much easier to sell when it's like, hey, I've got this much in here, so I'm just as much as risk as you than just like not having any money in the deal and just collecting assignment fees.
No, that's great. And then how did you get into the land development? Explain to our listeners, I'm familiar with land development, but explain to our listeners, like soup to nuts, what that looks like, because that's very unfamiliar territory for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's finding land in certain areas for growth. So for instance, you take a piece of property in an area that the neighborhood policy and the zoning is favorable and the city's favorable, that you take it and you get it entitled. You go through, take care of any encumbrances, you go through any easement issues, any title issues, you go through anything with the city, any regulations, maybe you have to tear down a house, maybe you have to get a traffic study or any of these type of things. And you're going to determine and bring the property to a highest and best use, but you're in between the person who bought the land and the person who's going to build it out. So we're adding that in between value in between the raw land and entitled land. So the builders, when they buy for the entitled land. So if we're buying it for 10 a pad, we're able to maybe sell it for 80 or 90 a pad, depending on the market and and how far along we take it. So it's worth more the further we go. So depending on when the exit is, if there's a buyer lined up or not, will depend on how far we go and what it's worth.
Hi, this is Melanie McCallan. Josh and I are just so grateful for the many investors who have already joined us at Accountable Equity. Accountable Equity is so much more than a capital group. It's really a community of accredited investors that want to learn and grow together. I just want to personally invite you, if you want to find out more about this type of investment and see if it's right for you and your family, please visit us at accountableequity.com.
Hey, it's Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. Enjoy.
Yeah, and how long does that typically take you to start to finish, getting all the entitlements in place?
Depends on the city and the municipality. In Nashville, we've done some that are over a year, some that are about 9 months. I say the average is about 9 months to 12 months, depending on what you have to do. And it's all based upon like hearing dates and getting your application in time, and it's all based upon a timeline. Usually cities, that's the way they are. So if you don't know what it is, talk to a city planner and start talking to whoever is you would be submitting the application to, and they can tell you how long it would take and the fees involved. And most of the time you have to hire an engineer or a firm to help you go through that and do all the civil engineering. You usually have to get some type of civil done to get it to pass through, especially for water and all that stuff, sewer.
And that land development, guys, just to dive a little deeper, in the past, 15, 20 years ago, there was like a land developer people would think of as both the developer and the builder. But more recently, that's kind of split into two, where you have a land developer and then you have a builder come in. And the builders coming in are willing to pay higher pricing to the developer because they can dig pretty much day one. Sometimes it's not day one, but the developer's taken it through the entitlement process. That's very, very valuable. What are some of the projects that you've worked on in the development side?
Wow, great question. Well, in 2022 alone, I think we pushed 22 deals through. Some were as little as like 10 units, some were as big as like 500. Mostly in Nashville, awesome. Turning like 3 and 5 acres into 1680 units. Maybe it could be 2 to 4 units, but mostly we like to stay in the sweet spot of 20 and up. Most of our projects are about the 80 unit range.
And do you stay local? Because I know with a lot of developers, since they have relationships in place, they like to stay local to certain areas.
So, yeah, and that's the hard part. Is if you definitely need to find your area and get your team in place first, your engineers, the right relationships with the people downtown and water and all that takes time. So if you have a piece of property in an area you're not familiar with, the due diligence period is much longer because you got to start from scratch, finding the engineers. And a lot of times the sellers don't give you a lot of time to figure this stuff out. So that's why we have an advantage over a lot of people, because when we have a good lead come in and we're actually negotiating with the seller, I can get my engineer to give me a concept or whatever in like a couple hours, compared to having to hire somebody, get a proposal and wait 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So like we have a couple in some different municipalities, but we only have like one in each area right now because we're just getting started. And those are long-term plays for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally get that. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is lending. You had mentioned that you do private lending to others. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, well, right now I just basically lend my reserve account. I charge 1.12%, and they're usually 6 to 12 month terms. The buyer that my borrower right now is somebody that I've worked with for years and years. So it's somebody that I know and trust, and he's paid me back on a lot of these already. We turn a lot of stuff over. Being a private lender, using your own funds is a little bit different than institutional, So you have to know how to underwrite the person, the project, like a bank would, and use those guidelines. Because if not, I know a lot of people that have had money and they lent it to a project and the project folded, and guess who's stuck with the property? I mean, it's great to be stuck with the property, but depending on the value and what's been done to it since. So like land, for instance, if you're going to be under an assignment with someone, you want to make sure your end buyer is going to do something to the regulations and stuff that you would do in case that they are not able to move forward, and you don't have to go back a year.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I also, we do some private lending, and, what are some of the things that you put into place, Greg, to kind of help ensure what you're like, what are some of the parameters you put into place to lend?
Well, so a lot of these deals are 40 to 60% ARV. So they have skin in the game. I have first position, and I know they're getting it for under, and they usually send me like their scope of work if they're going to flip it. They tell me what they're going to do with it. This is someone I trust, so I don't go through all that with them all the time. But I like to see the project, the numbers, what we think can sell for. A lot of times I'll go and I'll do my own research on what I think it could sell for. I talk to them about like their timelines with their subcontractors. Are there any other properties that if this doesn't work that you can pull from? A lot of times we'll either, if a term gets done early or we need to extend, we can cross collateralize different properties and notes just to make sure that I have my lien. So I want my first position lien, and I want a point up front, and then I'll take interest only for a year.
Those are good terms, by the way. They're very, very competitive.
Yeah.
And then another question on that, like, let's say there's already a mortgage in first position, but it's relatively low. It's a low risk. Would you take a second position? And also, do you require like a personal guarantee?
Great question. So as far as a personal guarantee, it just depends on the situation. There is one where I was second position. I believe I still am second position on, and then the mortgage, but I know the first position guy who's doing that private loan on that. He's actually one of my investors who invested with me on the apartment. So now back to the relationships, I happen to know this first position lien holder. So I feel like that if push came to shove, that he would work with me even though there's no agreement in place. And there has to be enough equity in the property.
Yeah, that's smart.
Like if it's first position 60K and second 150, and sometimes you can do a subordination clause where you just talk to the first position lien holder and say, hey, how could we even this out of a default, or could we switch? And maybe you pay a fee or something to switch.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that. I mean,
subordination clause. Yeah.
Wow. That's new. Okay. That's great. I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much. As we close up, Greg, where can our listeners find you? By the way, guys, we mentioned in the beginning of the show, hashtag stacked investing. That is such a cool hashtag. But where can our listeners connect with you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram. My email address is just my first and last name and the word realtor, Greg Farricielli, realtor@gmail.com. Pretty easy to get a hold of.
Can you spell that out for us, Greg?
Absolutely. It's Greg, and the last name is Farricielli. I'll have all those links sent to everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Damn straight.
We just got
buddy.
We got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.